It would seem we're live. Hello everyone, welcome back. We are talking once again about 6 incredible sites that, yes, have way too much to do with UI UX design, and I'm so happy to even be able to talk about them in the first place. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe because we talk about UI UX design and also fancy sites you should have seen a really long time ago. Let's just get started because at this point, what am I going to talk about? The first site that I want to talk about today is actually my favorite because of how weird it is, and it's simply because how weird it is. This is Mouse Parallax from Wow Showroom. I had never seen it before this stream started happening, and now that I have seen it, I don't think I can ever stop seeing it. This is a fun one. I have talked about Parallax for such a long time on this channel, and it's all about scrolling different things at different speeds, and that ends up giving you a bunch of really cool illusions when you're doing stuff in 2D. But this site takes that, gives it drugs, and then makes it run wild. That's just what's happening at this point. It's all I can talk about at this point now. Mouse Parallax goes to Wonderland. They try to take the concept of Alice in Wonderland, and what ended up coming out is somewhat vomit-like. So I don't know what's going to happen at this point. Most basic elements are kind of kept here and kind of retained, but the concept for this site is that every single element has a new kind of parallax, something new happening on its own, and it's basically a show type of everything that you could do as a cool function on the web. So even if you just start with the hero section, and this is the most basic thing you can do when you get started, things are going to go in their own directions. This is a cool effect that we have seen in many hero sections before, but the way they do the site is going to be very, very different, and it's definitely not something you'd want to have in production, but now that they do have it, what's the harm in looking at it? If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. I have no idea what's going to happen now. And the cool thing that I'm actually quite proud of is that they do talk about what they do with the actual elements here. They do interactions, they do mouse parallax, but the problem is it's really difficult to see behind the falling doll's legs. Down she well, and they do try to take a story, and if you're not very familiar with the old school Alice in Wonderland tale as it was told, this is going to seem very out of connections, and this is going to seem very, very random. That's exactly what's very weird now. And also I am very unnerved by the purple that they've used everywhere. I would want to talk about other great concepts of web design, but at this point, if they're making mouse parallax the center of everything that's going on, who am I to say no? Interesting point, before this even got started, I read the name of the site. It said Mouse Parallax, and I was legitimately expecting a rat. I just was legitimately expecting to see some sort of mouse, some sort of a rat, and the fact that I haven't yet is disappointing, even though they're talking about the computer mouse. It's quite disappointing to me. There were doors all around the hall, but they were all locked, and when Alice had been all the way down one side, and this is a story, and I don't even want to read it at this point, but you can read it if you want to. It's double-edged the way they do this site, because on the one hand, it's a site of the day from awards. On the other hand, they're very, very clear with what they do, and on the third hand, which I didn't even know existed with my point, the weird fact is they try to signal to you that they've used interactions and mouse parallax and swivel, but then you have no idea where it's happening, and the only thing the cursor hijack even says is move. So that's just where I'm at, and it's absolutely confusing. I have no idea what's going on here anymore. Again, clouds that have a little bit of parallax. Again, I'm trying to talk about the site, even break it down, but there's just a bunch of random parallax happening, and it's not very organized, which is why I'm still a little bit confused on what to say. And this is all very confusing, especially if you don't know the old school Alice in Wonderland novel book that most of us have not read. This is very weird. This is definitely very weird. And things try to do parallax, but again, they're just doing exactly the same thing with different variations, which is kind of cool, but I do think they lack a little bit of explanation, especially because they talk about interactions, mouse parallax, and then when they try to do something incredible like swivel, I think it would have been nicer to know that the thing that's happening with the doors is technically swivel. I think they just leave a little bit of important information there, and it's very, very disconcerting. And then you talk about, I think this is a great example of every single element that you would want to see, every single thing that you'd want to talk about when you visit parallax as a concept, and it gives you examples on what they're trying to talk about, which is nice. But I would have gotten what they were talking about very quickly if there was any single line of description. So what I mean by that is they talk about the word skewing, which is very, very small, because if skewing is the concept, make it big. And this is what happens when you talk about skewing. This is very, very visual as a demo. They take their weird, strong demo and they try to show you what skewing would look like in real time. So you get all of these different cards and they're skewed as they'd want to skew. And this is a very, very visual, real demo of what that concept as a mouse parallax demo would look like. And then they talk about the airy concept of mouse parallax. This is a very, very detailed description of every single kind of way to do mouse parallax, which would make an incredible explanation video too, if that's what you're interested in. And then they talk about airy. I think at the end of the day, the thing that we need to talk about here is everything that happens with parallax at this point is taking a couple of basic concepts, making things scroll differently, and sometimes taking into consideration where your cursor, your position is, and you're able to do a bunch of things with it. And now that you can take these two numbers of where you are and where the cursor speed needs to be in consideration, then you can make up all the words you would want: track, 3D, skew, airy, and you can actually implement them as concepts, and then that becomes your demo, which is the simplest way for me to even talk about this. And once again, this seems like it would belong on Wattpad far more than it would belong on a separate site, considering how much it is about the story. My favorite concept in this entire site would be obscure, which is this weird demon which is just going wherever it wants to go. This is the basic old school representation of taking your cursor, tracking the eyes. I'm pretty sure you've seen these demos if you have gone on to the world of CodePen and stuff, but I do think this is pretty cute. Again, does this site serve a huge purpose? Maybe not. Is this the prettiest site you've seen? In fact, it may be the opposite of the prettiest, but it talks about mouse parallax, and it's really, really nice when it tries to give you all of these different ideas that way. It does also bring in the story of Alice in Wonderland, which is also something you'd like to see, and it's built on Wix Studio, which is interesting because when you talk about a concept like parallax and then you bring in a website builder like Wix Studio or Framer, and I think Framer should not be included here because Framer went a little bit advanced, but when you bring in something like Wix Studio, you're kind of stuck with the options, which is not something that happens with programming. So I think that does bug me a little, but other than that, great site for mouse parallax. I am going to give this a 7 out of 10 because yes, they tried to bring in all of these concepts, make them look as pretty as possible, but also the colors from start to finish were very unnerving, and also the story and every single demo that happened was a little bit out of context, which definitely led me to be more confused than I should have been, and that is why this is a 7 out of 10. The next site that we're talking about, kelvinzero.com. I have no idea what's going to happen here. I'm sincerely hoping this is a good site, but who knows at this point. This is Kelvin Zero, and I am hoping this is much different from what we saw the first site of today be like. This is definitely very different. This is much more simple and mainstream and production level, and it is a shocker now that we've immersed ourselves in the world of mouse parallax from Alice in Wonderland. This is very, very different, and it does take all the major concepts of web design that we talked about before the last site came in, and you get to talk about and see them once again. kelvinzero.com, and right off the bat, I see a navigation bar that has every single modal, every single tooltip, every single main call to action, every single animation you'd ever want. Everything here is perfect, and it kind of gives you good preface for an even nicer site. I have no idea what's going to happen, why this site would even stand out, but let's see. I think immediately the thing that gets my attention is A, you try to do everything right, B, there's a 3D model in the hero section, and C, why is the font so simple? Because I was expecting serif fonts in this universe now, because yes, there is sans serif, but also it looks very, very basic, and that's the only problem I can point out with the entirety of the site. Again, super smooth animations, and there is a lot of white space when you need to have it, and this is really, really fun because it takes you up until a certain point of scroll and then it drives you in, so it's immersive as well. Again, every single thing that you'd want to have in a modern site you do have, and they do take their own time letting you scroll past all of the text that is present. They do take their sweet time letting you read and letting there be a lot of white space. As this is coming up, I was trying to resist comparing this site with Apple's site, trying to avoid the fact that they've taken inspiration here, but they clearly have. So I have to say, everything that's going on here, everything that happens is going to be very, very similar to the Apple new phone launch site that they've must have made recently. So this is very, very similar to whichever iPhone is going on now. I don't even know. And they've just taken those exact same animations that Apple tends to repeat over and over again, and it starts to happen. If you just put the two things together, it would make a lot more sense. It actually would, if you just tried. Multi-pass card, multi-pass digital. So they basically take 3D models of the main element that they're selling, and they try to make it expand, take its own space, which is absolutely incredible to see. But also, copycat coming from Apple. I have to talk about it, even if it's very legitimate inspiration only. This is exactly the same concept. How is it not? And I want to say they've done everything right, but they've also copied Apple to a scary degree, and I'm trying to resist comparing things now. And again, the fact that they have not taken a single serif font or any fancy font, just stuck with the most basic hardcore sans serif that sat across the table, is also what's making the site very generic very, very quickly. Because yes, they did everything right, but also we were expecting some personality the moment that 3D model went out, which, by the way, is quite similar to the 3D models that Apple uses when they start with their new product demo. When they ran out of a 3D model on Kelvin 0, everything ended, and this is the most generic site I've ever seen. Even if it does everything right, don't get me wrong. And once again, you get to see scrolls happening in horizontal and things zooming in and things zooming out. But also, this is so predictable because we've seen these concepts like 100 times repeated over and over again, and here comes the standard SVG path, which takes you on a weird journey. I've seen this so many times, I'm already exhausted and the site hasn't even ended. This is a good site, and it does everything right on surface. The typography will always bug me because there is nothing special happening with these fonts. How annoying is that? You didn't even bold your titles, which is something that you can do with Microsoft Word. Why would you not bold your titles? I mean, of course, you couldn't use Microsoft Word to bold the text on a website, but you get my point. I like the fact that they've actually used some icons, but it's just too little too late at this point. And the thing that annoys me most with most of these sites is they'll have something fancy across the screen, and it only happens when about 80-90% of the site is already over. So now there is this great thing that you could appreciate. Call it simplistic, call it minimalistic, call it incredible, but it just wasn't present in the second or third section where we would have wanted to see it, especially after the hero section faded out. Again, this site does everything right. Yes, you get to see the exact same elements happen over and over again, and I've seen these 100 different times on 100 different sites. Start with Apple, get it down the tunnel of absolutely every generic white, blue, black site ever, and this is extremely boring because there is nothing phenomenally interesting happening here. And I would take, even though this is the standard perfect site, I would take the last site that we saw, Mouse Parallax, over Kelvin 0 any day, simply because it was the weirdest of weird in the world of sites. This is the simplest, simple and most perfect in the world of sites. And even though they do everything right, and I get that they do everything right, I just have to give this a 5 out of 10 because at a certain level of proficiency, I was at least hoping you would use your own font, do something special, do something stupid, and it just did not happen, and we just kept sitting there waiting for anything special to happen at all, which is the entire reason I have to give this a 5 out of 10. The next site that we're talking about, once again, streamboatphase.com. I have no idea why we're here. This might be a video site, this might not be a video site, I have no idea at this point. Oh wow, this has sound. I think I should turn off sound because live streams don't like sound. Should I even be saying that right here on the live stream? I have no idea anymore. But, anyways, this is a grand movie which you can't control with your cursor, and it is very exhausting because, wow, this seems to be some sort of a Mickey Mouse thing. Can you use Mickey Mouse, which is a Walt Disney copyright, on your site? This seems to be a movie and you can't do anything about it. Actually, you can. This is a game. This is a game. I'm trying to decipher this in real time. This is a game, but for some reason you can't use keyboards. You can only point out to whatever Mickey would like to. I have no idea. Does Mickey jump off the deck? What is going on? I'm trying to click something. This is very weird. This is definitely weird. What's happening here? I have no idea. This is so awkward. Can Mickey jump off? What are we doing? Did these numbers change? I think they did. I think you have to collect all of them. Do I collect all of them? No idea. It has been a really long time since I've played games on computers. Can Mickey hang himself with the rope? I have no idea. What's the next? Can you skip this? Why would we be playing this game? I did not notice what this site was for, and I seem to be lost in this is going to make an excellent cut someday of this live stream, but as far as this is concerned, I have no idea what's happening. I'm supposed to be doing something and I need to find out what happens next, which is the entire reason I'm even trying. What is going on? I have no idea what's going on anymore. This is very weird. This is definitely very weird. Can someone skip this? This isn't fast forwarding either, and we're so close to 32. I am really going to be sad if we don't even get to that point, which is, wow. Can we just fast forward this somehow? I'm so sorry for the delay. I would not even be putting this if this could actually be edited out, but apparently it can't, and we've only got 3 left, so it's just going to have to be that way. Have we got 3 left, or am I just missing? Wow, there was one other weird musical note left. Did I leave something? Is the 32 supposed to be Mickey jumping off the deck? Wow, it's actually outside. This is very confusing, and I have no idea what to do anymore. Was this the entire point? Is this a game? The end? Wow, this just ended like that. Can anyone believe it? What's even happening at this point? This is very confusing, because was that the entirety of the site? I am confused. This is very confusing. Streamboat.face.com was a very weird game. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10 because I was expecting something to happen. The element of this just started happening right now. Is this another game? What even is happening anymore? I have no idea why this site is the way it is. This seems to be some sort of a video tribute to something which I don't even know at this point. Is this the site now? Was it already there? Was it just not going to happen? Is this some sort of an ad? I don't know where to start talking about this site, and I don't think it's going to end. It does have some cool effects. In fact, this is the only cool effect that it has. You can hover over one of these and it gives you a little bit of a special effect, and I'm going to continue adding to the last 2 points that we gave. Wow, even more music. This is very unnerving. Does anyone else find this unnerving? I have lost all internal GPS about this entire site. Again, I have no idea what's happening anymore. This was very confusing and very annoying. We started giving this site a 2 out of 10, and then ultimately it loaded to us this weird looking web page. I'm going to add one more point because this was definitely very, very cool, but then I'm going to take the rest of the points away because this is very unnerving. Personally, I have no idea what's happening anymore. 3 out of 10. Phase Studio. No idea what this was. Forgive me if this was confusing. I am confused myself. Very weird. Very, very weird. I have no idea what to talk about at this point with that weird a site. The next site that we're talking about isn't even supposed to be English. What is going on? This site decided midstream, not to load, 0 out of 10. I would try to revive it, but it was working before the stream started and it's decided not to work suddenly, which is why 0 out of 10. Would you look at that? It loaded. This is... Every site is now doing a double take, fooling me. Complete bamboozlement. Will lift the number from 0 to something. Let's talk about Blumenkoff Spaztec Studio Home. I'm hoping that is what it says. As soon as you get started, you see the old world, modern art, very, very old school. Wow, did everything just stop? You see a very, very old world, old school site. Can we reload this again, because I have a feeling it's not loading, it is not working. What even happened? Are we live? We seem to be live. That was not a problem. This site definitely is either going to make this stream work, or it might give me a virus on this device. God forbid. This is going to be the site that makes or breaks this entire stream. Even though we saw mouse parallax today, I'm just leaving it aside for now. Right as we get started, and I want to jump into Blumenkoff with whatever the hell is going on here. Very, very modern art, very, very offset UI, no idea what's happening anywhere anymore. You try to load each of these elements and it breaks your entire computer, because apparently loading a video in the background that was very, very heavy, that is the sense I get from this site, broke their entire site and made everything very janky. You can't give them complete points because of how slow the site is and how much the videos have basically bogged down everything. This is very, very slow compared to the other things that loaded here. The display, the layout entirely is very, very, very offset and modern artish, because things are just wherever they want to be, which is what the concept of new is over here. But also, again, I'm still very confused with everything that's happening over here. You get to see a couple of awards, but also not enough description, and the footer as well is very, very weird. Again, let's see what one of these does. Either I have just really lost the ability to understand everything ever, or this is a very weird site, because text is whatever size it would want itself to be, images are wherever they'd want to be, whatever color works. Why is this site even this site? What's going on? They seem to be a photography site. They seem to talk about Unsplash Awards, which is stock image, and they've worked with it to somehow win. I guess congratulations to them. I have no idea what's going on with this site. I tried so hard to understand what was happening with this site. I'm still going to give this site a 0 out of 10, because on the one hand, it was working very well before the stream. On the other hand, it broke on stream. On another hand, it just stopped working midway because the video was really, really heavy. And when it finally loaded, I still don't know what's happening with this site. 0 out of 10. I'm trying so hard to understand everything that's happening. Either I have not slept enough to be understanding what's happening in this world anymore, or this site really is way too intelligent for me. The next site that we're talking about is, once again, eseagency.ch. No idea what this one's going to be about either, but I'm really hoping it's good. I'm really, really sincerely hoping it's good. This is ESE Agency, and you get to see a couple of really, really cool things happen with the site itself. There are a couple of really, really nice effects as soon as you get started. Number one, there is a complete video playing in the background, which only works as you scroll, and it has a wonderful gradient, but it's a part of a video technically. And then you have their main tagline in a continuous marquee tag. You have all the links, all the navigations, all the words, everything that you'd want to have. Font is a little too big, but at the end of the day, it does tell you what they do, which is nice. But I would have appreciated maybe having a little bit of a differentiation when you talked about each of these elements. No one knows what's happening anymore, which is exactly what's confusing me now, and I have no idea what they're even trying to do. I like the fact that they've actually put things in a grid instead of throwing them around randomly like the last site that we saw, but also very, very clear, very, very hard words in front of your face. And typography and typography hierarchy is definitely what's off the table here. So there is no difference between this is supposed to be a title, this is supposed to be a description, and everything is just plumped into one and just thrown across the table, and it's very weird. It's very, very weird. Everything that they'd want to put as images, they put as images. Everything they wanted to put as videos, they've put as videos. Yes, there is the good side of taking the hero section with a background image, gradient going from bottom to top, and also putting the title in a marquee tag, and they kind of continue to do that even when they build out a slider. But also a very, very simple site when you take out all of the different elements that they kind of use to make it out together. This is a very, very simple site from the looks of it. And then you get more weird stuff happening with absolutely no control over the size of the text. So now you have all of this text with barely any hierarchy. When stuff is big, and they just don't make anything different, anything smaller, anything more colored, anything different. And you kind of have to force yourself to read these huge text paragraphs to even be able to get any kind of context in as to what is happening, which is the weird part with this entire site. On the fancy side, they have 2 different languages for this site, a complete navigation which is very, very clear and very, very not seen commonly on the sites that we've been seeing today. Footer is very clean, takes up the entire space that you'd want it to, and it continues from top to bottom with the same exact consistent idea of taking a title, making it in a marquee tag, letting it roll continuously, infinitely. You can hover over it to just remove the internal colors and stuff. Again, they've taken a couple of very basic concepts. For example, getting text into this marquee tag, instead of just having any image happen, they've put a basic gradient that goes from bottom to top, and they've put their images or videos inside of it, and they've kind of let that stay. And that exact same template has not only stayed with you in this slider, it also continued when we were in the hero section, and this was, by the way, a simple video that started playing as you were scrolling, if that was confusing at all. So on the positive side of things, they've taken one consistent concept, repeated it over and over again at the right places to make this work. On the negative side, there is no typography difference, variation, change, anything. They've just put text in front of your face, and you're supposed to read a huge chunk of text to be able to get the smallest piece of context as to what is happening. This is a very okay-ish site, because some things they do incredibly well. The entire full screen display of the video of the project, whatever they are building here, is quite nice. So it's at the end of the day, it's a very mid kind of site. Like, I'd give this an easy 6 out of 10, because on the one hand, some things work really, really well. On the other hand, they have no idea what to do with their huge dynamic pieces of text. So 6 out of 10, ESE agency, if that is what this deserves. The last site that we're talking about today, Revenant.tv. Again, I have no idea what's going to happen with this site. I really hope it is good, and I really hope this makes some sense compared to everything that we've seen today. Beautiful moving imagery with edge. Let's see what this one talks about. Again, I'm really happy with the fact that they've gotten a couple of concepts that you'd want to have with a normal site. For example, their standard navigation, their standard logo, their standard image at the background, some text with change in typography styles, and they've just taken all of the basic things that you'd want to have in a hero section, put it out here, made it work consistently. But also, the thing that confuses me a lot is what even is going on with this site. Let's see what's going on with this. So they get a bunch of text, put it into an image, and they just kind of make it work with their own speed. A video plays out. This is a fancy image gallery now. They have their featured projects. Everything takes up exactly the space it needs to. Again. As a whole, this is a good site. But also, I'm looking for what's super special here, because if you've been around here, if you've seen these streams for any length of time, you know this kind of a feature project section is something that we've seen over and over again in the last few days. So that is where we're standing at. And then they show you a couple of their featured projects and a couple of marquee tags and their articles, and then you get the footer really, really quickly. Overall, as far as finesse is concerned, this is a very fine footer, very fine site. They take their own title, and this trend came in heavy in late 2024, and it has just stuck with us since. They'll take the name of the brand, make it big, put it as the last thing in the footer, and it gives a really, really clean brand finish. And they'll take all of their links, dump it above, and they'll take all of their basic details, for example, contact details and subheadings, and they'll just put it right at the top. Very, very basic concepts in the world of advanced sites, and they've kind of made it work really, really well. They stick to a certain purple brand color, which is also nice, but the thing that did unnerve me was this purple wasn't very prominent when they started with the site. So I think that's kind of the variation line that we're walking with here. Overall, a very simple site, does what it's supposed to do, has a couple of immersive zoom in, zoom out effects, which will make you say, wow, this is a pretty site. I have to give it a 9 out of 10 because there isn't much that's really wrong with it. They do take two different fonts and kind of make them work well together. So you have your serif, which is a little bit fancier. You have your simple sans serif, which takes up all of the space and the reading material that it needs to. There is typographical hierarchy because you have smaller fonts, you have bigger fonts, you have fonts of every shape and size, and then at the end of the day, it is a nice site and it does work really, really well. Let's see all of their featured projects, because what else are we going to do? And it is taking a surprisingly long amount of time, which is making me ultimately regret clicking the button entirely. Wow, very weird. When is this going to load? I do not have patience today. It might have to do with the fact that I have not slept for a really long time. I will not disclose the number of hours, but a nice site overall. Again, you get to see the standard blog section, the way they build sites with their own central cards, and you get to see this site actually be consistent with the card's title and image and text and every single kind of card that you would want to see it have. But also, you get to see the same patterns repeat over and over again until it becomes boring, and you have to stay from here to over here and go from top to bottom with the same exact 4 concepts. The cool element with this entire card is the fact that you can filter out each specific category of projects, which is nice to see. But also, they're using the same exact concept over and over again, not just for consistency, but for a time so long that things actually become boring. So with that said, I stick by the rating that I initially had for Revenant, 9 out of 10. A cool site that does everything right on paper, but also the repeated consistency makes things boring. So I think that's where the 1 point went away for me. This has been an incredible stream. Thank you so much for joining me live. We talked about 6 incredible sites today, all of which were super cool, all of which came from awwwards.com, all of which took incredible concepts of UI UX design, web design, put it in real life, and we got to see them, experience them, talk about them. I hope you liked this stream. I will be live here again tomorrow, every single day, 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time or 3:30 p.m. GMT. Until then, good night, keep designing.